It's been said that the two most important days of a person's life are the day they're born and the day they figure out why. Hi, I'm Jimmy Lakey, the host of the Critical Mission podcast. I figured out what my why was. I thought early on I might be a politician. Maybe I'd be a pastor. Maybe I'd be a preacher. I started a music company. I host a radio show. But my why, it was all discovered on the streets of Africa, in Rwanda, when I met a little child that I adopted and decided I'm going to take care of widows and orphans in Africa. My organization, my why, is riverspromise.org. What's your why? What about my guest? What's their why? We tell the story of people's why right here on the Critical Mission podcast. Hey everybody, it's Jimmy Lakey with the Critical Mission podcast. Your mission is critical. My mission is critical. All of us have a mission in life. Go to the website, mymissioniscritical.com, and you can find more of the stories that we tell on this podcast. And maybe there'll be some resources there, or at least some contact to help you find your critical mission. Listen, I grew up thinking I didn't think I'd be doing radio. I didn't think I'd be doing podcasting. I didn't think I'd be doing my work in Africa, in Rwanda. I thought maybe I'd be a pastor, maybe I'd be a preacher. I ran for office, thought I'd be a politician. I started a very successful music company, entertainment, promotion, artist management, cigar company. I've done it, but then I went to Africa on a missions trip, and I started an organization called Rivers Promise, and I found out my why in life. The two most important days of a person's life, the day they're born and the day they figured out why. And when I was dealing with orphans in Africa, I realized of all the other things I've done, business, politics, etc., my why God has me on the planet, is to take care of orphans and vulnerable children. That's what I do through my organization, Rivers Promise, and other people have a why story to tell as well. And that's what we do on this podcast. My mission is critical. My guest today is, I'm going to mess up the name. Olivia is easy to say. Krolczyk is a little bit more difficult. Olivia, how are you?
Good. How are you?
How did I do on the pronunciation of the name?
Close enough, yep. Krolczyk.
Krolczyk. Yeah, Krolczyk, you say Krolczyk. Olivia Krolczyk is my guest. Now, you are a campus reform reporter, and you're also an ambassador for the Riley Gaines Foundation. And anybody who's heard Riley Gaines' story, and I've had Riley on my broadcast radio show, Riley is an All-American swimmer that was robbed from the trophy and the award that she should have because there was a biological male, still with all the business intact, swimming and pretending, in my estimation, to be a woman. And Riley got robbed, and Riley has started the Riley Gaines Foundation defending women's athletics and sports. You're an ambassador for that organization, Olivia, and we're going to get into your story. But you're at the university. Tell us where you're at school and kind of what happened at school that caused you to be sitting in front of this camera today.
Yeah, of course. So last summer at the University of Cincinnati, as a chemistry major, I was going through the decision of graduating a year early. I wanted to take an abundance of credits to graduate early. So I signed up for 34 credit hours, which is an entire year's worth, if not more, of classes in the summer semester. And I was going through the graduation requirements at the time to make sure I hit every single step. And the one that I had not taken yet was the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI, required course at University of Cincinnati. So I decided to, I'll take this class and get it over with. I scrolled through the options that were available that summer to come across LGBTQ activism, queer studies, and women's gender studies. What seems to be the lesser of the evils is women's gender studies. So of course I picked that one. Mistake. And so we get partway into this class, and I was assigned a final project, which was worth half of my grade, and it was on feminism, which makes sense. It was a women's gender studies course. So I'm going through this project, and I choose to write about the rights and opportunities that women have had throughout history in athletics. I began with the first woman to compete in the Olympics, the fight for Title IX, and then I ended up with, hey, what's happening now? Look at what happened to Riley Gaines. We started here and somehow we're just going downhill, allowing males in our sports. And while writing this project, I used the term biological woman. I think that was the conservative student in me trying to not get in trouble, which did not work. And so I said that men should not be competing in biological women's sports, which I know is redundant to say biological now. But I was trying to not get in trouble. I turned this project in. A couple days later, I received a notification that I got a 0 on this project. My grade went down to an F. I had a 100% before, and all of a sudden it was tanked. I'm really confused. I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. I click on the notification and it says, Olivia, this is solid work, but the term biological woman was contributing to heteronormativity, is transphobic and hateful. Therefore, you get a 0% on this project. Which my initial reaction was honestly to laugh. Could you imagine being in that situation where you turn in a project and your professor actually failed you for saying one word? So I sat down with my mom because I didn't really have a conservative group or really anyone else to turn to and ask for help. So my mom and I sat down and we, came up with this really professional email because at this point we knew it was going to go to a higher level based on the situation. So we wrote an email and went back and forth with my professor, who ultimately told me I was transphobic for using the term and that, sex is an umbrella. You can't say biological woman because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as just a woman, that it's an umbrella, which once again, how is this lady teaching a class? So at this point, I decided to reach out to the school and post it on social media, which is a whole other story, but that's pretty much how I got involved in this. I was affected by the DEI leftist indoctrination, and that's pretty much what threw me into this battle.
Now, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but evidently you were a little bit too diverse to be included in there. You had a viewpoint of what most of us would, biological woman. You have the biological traits. A biological man's going to have, we call them twigs and berries. Biological women not going to have that. And yet you dared to say there's a such thing as a biological male, and they said you're now transphobic, homophobic, and they're not so much for DEI. You're kind of thrown out. Have diversity, equity, inclusion as long as you agree with exactly what they have to say. So you take this to a higher power. The first step up, they say you are homophobic, transphobic, whatever, because you use this phrase. You go to the higher power. You start climbing up the University of Cincinnati hierarchy. Is anybody talking common sense? Is it just the same stuff?
Well, I went back and forth a couple weeks with the Gender Equity and Title IX office at my school, in which I filed a formal free speech complaint against my professor for suppressing my right to free speech. And at the same time, I decided to post a video, funny enough, on TikTok. Never expected it to blow up, but it ended up getting 6.4 million views before it was taken down for hate speech. And I had
wait. So your TikTok, you get taken down for hate speech after 6.4 million views. What was in the video?
I said something along the lines of, I put the picture of the teacher's comment and the 0%, and I said, my professor failed me for saying biological woman. Are we not allowed to say that anymore? Apparently that's hate speech.
That's hate speech.
Huh. Yeah, according to TikTok. So that got taken down, and I, went on social media a couple times on TV because my story had blown up. And I never said the name of the professor, never said the name of the class because it was about the bigger picture. It wasn't about, punishing the professor. And eventually, after I was getting fed up with the university for not fixing the issue, I name dropped on Newsmax. And all of a sudden, the next day, I have an email from the Title IX office at University of Cincinnati wanting to solve the issue. So it did work calling them out. I wish it didn't get to that point. I wish they had handled it from the beginning. But I guess enough people were fed up with my story and called or emailed the school to get it solved. And so my grade was changed by a different professor. And then they decided to reprimand or punish my professor for her actions. They made her take a free speech course and submit her syllabus for the upcoming school year. But about 3 days after they announced this reprimand, they ultimately decided to reverse it, and my professor got away with the suppression of free speech.
So let the media think that the teacher, the professor is going to be disciplined and we've got control of this and we believe in free speech. The cameras all leave, the microphones all go away. Oh, never mind, Miss Professor, carry on as normal.
Yep, exactly. And that really did upset me. Once again, it wasn't about like punishing the professor, but it came to a point where I never released the name of my teacher or of the class, and all of a sudden she announces her own name through the Cincinnati Enquirer. She interviewed with someone and said, "Hey, I'm the teacher, and yeah, I did do this to the student because she's being harmful towards marginalized communities, and she's, showing white supremacist values." And I'm like, what, how did we get to this point? So at that
But
point, I was just like, she's trying to, basically ruin my future almost, for calling her out for, failing me for saying one word. And at that point, I was very upset that the school decided to stand by the teacher and not stand by women.
so you use the phrase biological woman, you all this hoopla, and by the time the professor outs herself and says, I was the professor that did this, and by the way, she's a white supremacist, basically. So we go from biological, the phrase biological woman is a sign of white supremacy. Again, they have a different dictionary or thesaurus than probably the average American has. The crazy story, where I want to get kind of to where you're at now, but as far as the journey and your cause and standing up, and it's kind of changed your life trajectory probably a little bit. Are you still in school? What's that like, being that you're Olivia Krolczyk and you took on the University of Cincinnati? What's life like for you now?
It's definitely hectic to say the least. My life has changed in so many different ways for the good and bad. I was going to school for chemistry, wanting to either be a neurosurgeon or go into pharmacology. That's not going to happen anymore, but I will hopefully have my degree to stand by if I need to. I'm unsure of what to do right now with the University of Cincinnati. I only have a couple more classes left to take before graduating. So it's a tough situation. If I transferred to a different school, I would have to take like a year of classes instead of the few that I need left. So I'm still working through that decision, but I will have my degree in chemistry at some point. And I obviously never thought I would be on a podcast or on TV or traveling the country giving speeches. I don't know, that was never expected for me. In fact, I can remember 5 years ago in high school running out of my speech class after giving a 2-minute speech to my friends because I was so terrified of standing up in front of a room. And here I am talking to literally millions of people about what happened to me and about why this has to stop. So it was definitely, I think God really just has a plan for you. And I didn't know that this would be my plan, but he knew I would be able to handle it. And that's why he had this happen to me. That's why he put me in this position, because he knew I'd be able to stand up to it. As hard as it has been so difficult losing friends, so difficult, having all of these hate comments and threats coming on social media. It's hard to juggle your home life, your family life on top of traveling to schools and traveling across the country to give speeches. So my life has definitely changed. And honestly, I would say it's for the better. I'm getting the chance to, reach out to young girls who are just like me, who experienced something just like me, or who are going through that right now. And, tell them there is someone standing by you. You don't have to be afraid to speak up, because I'll stick by you. Riley will stick by you. There are people to help out.
Now, you said you had planned to go pharmacology and neurosurgery, but that's not going to happen now. Is that by your choice? Is that just they made it too difficult to pursue that line at the University of Cincinnati? Why is that not going to happen? That was your dream.
For me, it's more about, I'm put in this position and this is the fight that needs to be fought right now. So all the other stuff, all those dreams of being a doctor or whatever it is, they can wait. This is something that can't wait. And I got thrown into the position. I'm apparently the only 20-year-old who will stand up for it. So I have to. At this point, it's not even a choice. I just have to, because I would feel too guilty not standing up for the truth. Because someone has to do it.
So the premise of the podcast is obviously the critical mission, and our critical mission is the two most important days of a person's life: the day they're born, the day they figure out why. Up until a certain day, several months ago, a year ago or so, you thought your why was to be a doctor and to go into medicine, and all of a sudden the brakes got tapped on that, and you're willing to sacrifice all that because God, you believe, has put you in a place that you got to set that aside. This is your why.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have, as silly as it may sound, I had a moment where I realized, okay, there's a reason that this happened to me. There's a reason that all of a sudden I have the courage to stand up and say something. It happened to me for a reason, and I'm going to embrace that. I'm going to, do the best I can with what I'm given. It is hard. I understand that a lot of other people wouldn't be able to stand up. I just hope that one day I can encourage everyone to have the ability to do so.
Here's a question. 20 years old at the time that we're recording this, and this has been going on now several months. So late teens, now early 20s, everything that you signed up for in career day in high school, it goes out the window. I'm sure at 18 years old, walking across the high school graduation stage, you weren't expecting this to be what you do with the rest of your life. Where do you think that strength came from to be that 20-year-old that says, I guess I'm the only one that'll fight, so dang it, I'll put everything else on hold and I'm going to fight? Where did that strength come from?
I think it came from, honestly, a couple different things. I think it came from my faith partly, and then I think it also came from the family members that I have, encouraging me to, stand up for what's right. They have stood by me through this whole thing. My one friend who didn't turn their back on me, she has been incredible, super supportive, and I think that that means a lot. It really does strengthen you as a person to know that you have people supporting you. And also, in addition to those things, something that's kept me going through all of this is the incredible number of messages I've received from other girls and other students who are saying, I wasn't allowed to say this in my class, or I'm too afraid to say something in my class, or I also got failed for this. That's kept me going because when is it going to stop? I know that I'm one story in hundreds. And unfortunately, I was the only one to say something. So hopefully, the goal of the Riley Gaines Center, one of the goals is to be able to, help these students speak up for themselves and, put an end to this whole DEI and leftist indoctrination thing.
So fascinating because sometimes in life, when I started my work in Africa, I'm seeing all these hundreds and hundreds of children, literally some with no clothes, starvation. And I'm seeing that, and I know I got to do something, but I've got to have support. I've got to have at least feeling like somebody's cheering you on. And for me, that was also faith-based. That was also, James talks about true religion is taking care of widows and orphans. Talk about your faith and how that gave you the strength to take on a battle that you didn't know in life at 15, 16, 18 years old you were going to have to fight. How did your faith give you that courage to take on this new why?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in a very Catholic family, and I think for the couple years prior to when I turned 20, I actually struggled with my faith, which I'm a little ashamed to admit I did struggle. And I don't know exactly why that happened, but like I said, I definitely had a moment when all this began where I realized, like, oh my goodness, I was put in this position for a reason. Like, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose. And I definitely have realized throughout my fight, throughout all the opportunities I've been given, throughout all the people I've met, that, your faith is really like, it's just the center of who you are. It's the center of this whole fight. And I think part of the issue is that religion was taken out of this country when we are founded upon religion. And the fact that we have to actually tell people that a man and a woman are different when God created us exactly that. And it's, I would say, fairly obvious. It is incredible to see that we actually have to stand up for those values because people aren't being taught faith. They've taken it out of the schools, they've taken it out of family. And that's definitely something that pushes me to keep my faith close to me and hopefully bring that to my family one day as well.
It's fascinating that it's almost like they poked the bear and they shouldn't have wakened a sleeping giant in Olivia, because I'm guessing just from our conversation that you weren't necessarily a politically motivated person. You're just wanting to go into a career in neurosurgeon, pharmacology. You're just ready to just go right along and do this career path and, pay the bills, get a job, have a family. You weren't thinking about becoming what I guess maybe people would call an activist. They picked on the wrong person.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely never considered myself a political person. I always knew growing up that I disagreed with pretty much everyone around me, everyone in my school. I grew up near Chicago, so very blue area. I disagreed with pretty much all of my friends about everything, but I was able to set that aside just to, get through school, to have friends, to get along with people, and that's fine. I don't think different political views should make you like not friends anymore.
Sure.
So I was able to set that aside, and I guess, yeah, they did like awaken the sleeping bear because I had been hiding all of this inside of me, or I didn't feel the need to express how I felt about certain things, and I was given the chance to, and now here I am, just like a rolling snowball, and I'm gonna keep going.
What does the future look like? I mean, obviously you're 20 now and you probably had a vision of what 22, 23, 24 and I remember graduating high school. Even then, you're right. I'll be married by this age and have 2.5 kids by this age, and my sports car, and I'm going to retire at this age. And you probably, like most people, had this all mapped out. How does let's say you're 20 now? How does 21-year-old Olivia, 22-year-old Olivia's life you think look different than what you had probably mapped it out to look like?
Um, Actually, I think it still looks pretty similar. I have always wanted to get married and start a family younger than the current average, because women are waiting longer to have children now, and that's once again part of what schools are teaching them. But I've always valued, the traditional family morals and views. I've always wanted a family. I want maybe 5 kids if possible. And I think I'm still on track with my timeline. Maybe in the next year or so, hopefully get married, maybe start having kids, which I know seems young, but that's fine. Everyone has their own, what they want. So hopefully I will have a lot of kids. I think that's very important to me. And yeah, so I don't think my timeline or my trajectory on life has changed that much in the sense of family. And of course, I could always go back to that career path if I wanted to, but right now I am in the position that's needed, and I'll stay there as long as I have to.
I'm thinking pharmacology, neurosurgeon. There's an economic standard and kind of a budget that you kind of go, wow, that's going to be a decent salary. And being an activist, a reporter for campus reform, an ambassador for the Riley Gaines Center, all noble, but you're making a huge sacrifice on the income and the career just for this cause, just for God put you in this place. You think this is your battle. If it's not me, who's going to fight it? You're going to step up and fight it. That's a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's been a huge sacrifice, and a lot of people don't understand, because of course a lot of the top like conservative political people, they probably aren't struggling financially, and I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying it is a big sacrifice. When I am traveling the country, I'm not able to work my job. I have to take days off. I have to go do these speeches, and people don't understand that sacrifice. So it has been difficult, but I'm lucky that I have had the help that I've had so far. But it's definitely something to consider when you're getting into this. Yeah, it is hard, but absolutely worth it.
You're fighting a battle, and I'm sure, and anybody who's been in a battle knows that there's good days of fighting and there's bad days. There's days that you come back to the base or the foxhole or whatever, and you're like, that was a good one. We did great. And there's probably other days that you go, I feel like I'm getting my butt kicked today. What are those days when you're out fighting this? You know you've made a sacrifice. Everything in your life has changed. What are those days that send you back to base going, it's all worth it? This is fantastic. What happens and what is it that feeds you and you go, I'm glad I'm in this battle?
I can think of 2 examples that happened recently, actually, that really are just keeping me going. I was doing a like woman on the street interview type thing, and I was talking to one of the girls who was complete liberal, thought that men should be in the women's sports, all of that, completely supportive of that. And we were going back and forth, and we got to the point where she said, maybe you're right. Maybe I should do more research. And that's when I realized I got to her. Like I opened the door for her to let her know, hey, maybe something isn't right. And that's a win for me to know that I was able to influence someone to do more research before following what they were told on social media. And then another recent example, I gave a speech to a couple students in, I think it was St. Louis, and one of the students came up to me after and had an issue that was happening at a school. I'm not going to say too much just because we're dealing with it still. But he was at a Catholic school and something happened regarding reading a Bible and he was punished for it. And we have been able to work with him. We're trying to solve the issue. And that's also a win for me to know that I was able to reach a student and influence him to stand up and come and ask for help. So that's definitely an improvement, and I'll take that as a win.
So there's also, let's do the opposite of that. Are those days that in fighting the battle, you go, what am I really thinking? Is this really it? God, did I miss a turn here? Was I supposed to go left when I went right, right when I went left? What are those days? Give me a scenario where you know you've made a sacrifice, you know your career path has kind of changed, at least for now. What are those days that kind of eat at you and you go, I hope this is right, because it just wasn't a good day?
I've had plenty of those days, unfortunately, and probably more of those days than the good days, and that's just part of the battle right now. Definitely the fight has been exhausting, because you give and give and give and give, and you might not get anything back. You're going on shows, you're traveling. It's exhausting, the sacrifices you're making, not being able to work, not being able to see your family, your boyfriend, your dog, all of those things. It is emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. And then there's also days where sometimes the hate comments get to you. They haven't so much recently, but I know when all of this started, within the first month or two, I was just blown away with what people could say to you. It made me lose complete faith in humanity for a second, because I have a hearing loss and they were making fun of my speech impediment, which I know I have. It's not that big of a deal. I can't help it. And I was like, so much for being inclusive, they're making fun of someone with a disability. So there's been days like that where they'll bully me for my eyebrows or call me Sugar Cube as a horse nickname because apparently I look like a horse. So like there's a bunch of different things that sometimes eat at you. But I've learned to, just ignore them because they have nothing better to say.
You obviously have a background in faith and you're grounded in your faith. And I think some of us that are faith people and followers of Christ, we would like to think that when I'm in the center of God's will, I'm doing exactly what I'm put on the planet to do. It's all going to be easy. And you found out that sometimes being in the center of His will or the center of His plan is actually the harder path.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's what stops most people from standing up for the truth is they are so afraid of, all the hardships that come with it, whether it's losing your job, your friends, your family. I've experienced a lot of it, losing all of my friends but one. I had one of my friends text me, please remove me from all of your social media. I'm ashamed to be associated with you, you bigot and transphobe. And I was like, have a good day. Like, I didn't even know what to respond at that point. We'd been friends for like 5 years. So obviously she wasn't a real friend. I've had actually my godfather reach out to my mother and my grandfather, not even to me, reaching out to them saying, I can't believe you're letting your daughter or your granddaughter do this, and go on social media and like say all this stuff about, being transphobe or whatever. I'm like, all I said was that a man isn't a woman and that I got failed for saying biological woman. So I texted him and I was like, if you have something to say, I'm a grown adult. You can text me, not my mother and my grandfather. And he pretty much just told me how ashamed he was of me for standing up for myself. And his son is transgender. They started hormones on him a while ago. They want to get him implants, all of that stuff. And he was kind of trying to gaslight me, for lack of better words, into thinking that I was a horrible person, saying, I'm your godfather, I love you more than anything, I can't believe you would go on social media and say all this. And I'm like, you're the least godly person I know for doing this to your child. God made him the way that he is, and he's trying to make me feel bad for saying that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this to your child. So I definitely know all the hardships that come with standing up. I know how difficult it is. So that's probably what stops the majority of people from standing up.
Sometimes that you're right, that why can be scary, whether it's persecution like you face, or whether it's, I care for the widows and orphans in Africa. No matter what, that's going to be a focus. I take everything away, I'll do that. Those are commitments, and sometimes when you want to have a big why and make a big difference, it's a big sacrifice. And you're right, it probably stops a lot of people from doing something, but doing big things causes you got to make a big step.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I was talking to a coach at the NCAA women's swim and dive finals, and I was interviewing him, and then I got to the question, should a man be allowed in the women's sports category? And all of a sudden, he literally starts shaking. You can see this video on my Twitter or on Campus Reform. He is freaking out, saying, "Oh my gosh, this is so scary. Please don't use the video. Please don't. I can't lose my job." Just going on. The full video wasn't even posted. It's just so long of him saying, "Please, I'm so scared. Please don't use this." So of course I blurred out his face because I'm not a horrible person. But so we blurred out his identity, but we did share the video because it's so important to show how afraid people are to stand up, because they will lose their jobs. They will lose opportunities for their children who are competing, all of these different things. So it's definitely going to be a very, very difficult and long fight.
Are you familiar with the biblical story of Esther?
I am not.
Esther is the one, and you look it up. Your story reminds me of Esther, and she is a Jewish woman, and she's in the king's household and finds out that the king through his people are going to try to destroy the Jewish people, massacre, genocide, etc. And she finds out, and she gets approached. You've got to talk to your husband. You've got to speak to him. And she goes, he could kill me. And I think it was her servant, I believe, that said, if he says, but who knows, you've been sent to the kingdom for such a time as this. And if you don't do it, God will raise someone else up to do it, but you are called to do that. Look up the story of Esther. You may find that to be a encouragement to you, because you were sent for a time like this. And without even knowing that story, without even Esther as a superhero, you've stepped up and doing what maybe other people have been afraid to do. And maybe you can inspire other people to stand up. And whether it's this battle or another battle, it's not always easy to take the step, but if that's where God wants you to be, he'll take care of you all along the way.
Yeah, for sure. That is a great story. I definitely feel called to be in this position, and I hope that I stay encouraged to continue what I'm doing. I'm sure I will, because I won't go down without a long, hard fight. But hopefully I also am able to accomplish this task of, influencing other girls to stand up for themselves and inspiring them, hopefully girls and students for that matter, because we need strength in numbers. And right now we've all heard that the left is a minority, but they're very loud, and it's so true. So what we need to do is have strength in numbers, and I cannot do it all. I cannot be the only 20-year-old who stands up for things. I shouldn't even have to stand up for anything. The adults should be standing up for me. The men should be standing up for me, but somehow a 20-year-old is traveling the country to tell groups of adults that a man actually isn't a woman. So it's a little funny that I'm in that position, but it is what it is.
You're fighting a battle that the grown-ups should have fought long before you had to get there. Now you're having to clean up the mess of idiots. That's what you are. You're sent to the kingdom for such a time as this. Look up that story, the two greatest days of a person's life, the day they're born, the day they figure out why. And I'm sure 19, 20 years old, you kind of figured out why. It wasn't what you expected, but I want folks to follow you. If they first of all, Campus Reform, you're a reporter for them, the Riley Gaines Foundation, people can look that up. How do they follow you? How do they follow your work? How do they stay in touch and maybe give you encouragement in the battle?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's Olivia Krolczyk, Krolczyk. I'm Polish, it's a long one. And then also you can look me up on the Riley Gaines Center. And if you want to request a speaker, you can do that. You can request Riley. There's swimmer Paula Scanlon, a couple other girls, and me to come to your campus or your event. And we would love to talk to more groups of people and share our stories.
Olivia Krolczyk, and hope people follow you. I think of all the interviews, we're just launching this. You're one of our first several. So maybe watching this like 5 years from now, they're going to go, when was that? You're probably one of the most blatant and obvious persons who, the day you're born and the day you figured out why. A lot of people, it's much more of a journey. It's not a light switch went on, but for you, it sounds like that light switch went on. And in a sense, that's easy because now you know your why and what you're put on the planet for, but it's hard because you're in the middle of a battle you never thought you'd be in.
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely not ready for it, but I figured it out. So.
Well, congratulations to you for figuring it out. And again, follow Olivia. Give your Instagram again.
It's Olivia, Krolczyk.
Instagram, Riley Gain Center. You can look her up as well. Thanks, Olivia, for being on this edition of the Critical Mission Podcast. Again, 2 most important days of a person's life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why. Olivia figured out hers. I figured out why I was born. I'm on the planet breathing oxygen today so that I can take care of widows and orphans in Africa. Olivia is breathing oxygen today so she can fight a fight to stand up for men and women in sports. You heard the whole story. That's her fight. Maybe you don't know what your fight is, but here's what you got to do. Just remember, you're on the planet for a reason. God put you here for a reason, and you're sucking oxygen. You got a purpose. You have a mission today. Your mission is critical. I told you how to contact Olivia for her mission and give her some encouragement. If you want to learn more about my mission, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.org, or My Mission is Critical podcast, mymissioniscritical.com, mymissioniscritical.com. And everybody, thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Critical Mission Podcast.